Everybody mentioned that nobody will replace spreadsheets. Could be Excel or Google Sheets or whatever. Nobody is Sourcetable's mission to replace spreadsheets?
For the last 6,000 years, humans have been organizing society through some kind of structured tabular data. When the computers came about and the PC era, we used Excel for all of our financial modeling and otherwise project management.
For most, it's something which is a very taboo, and they feel like they really fear spreadsheets for some reason.
The reason why spreadsheets are used by over 1 billion people today is because they're very easy to use to get started. But once you go on that learning curve, things get hard.
For the next generation of, let's say, 20 years from now, what is your advice for some of the people to kind of start honing their skills in terms of, being able to use spreadsheet?
My number one piece of advice to people is to stay curious.
Hello and welcome everyone to the next episode of the AI Media House podcast, Simulated Reality. Today we have with us the founder and CEO of Sourcetable, Eoin. Eoin, how are you doing today?
Hi, very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, fantastic. We're going to talk about spreadsheets and Excel sheets, and that's a very interesting topic. And I believe that with the advent of all the AI innovation we're doing, we have come a full circle because, probably Excel sheets were probably the first data analysis or data analysis that humans started to doing, or that's the first medium online tool that everybody started using when it came to data analysis. What was your thought process? What was some of the why? How did you think of this idea? What were some of the problems that you were facing or you were seeing people face that you thought that it might be a viable idea to raise money and start?
So Sourcetable is an AI spreadsheet. It is built to make you incredibly productive. And so it feels like working with an analyst. Most people use it for things like analysis, data analysis. They use it for reporting. They use it for visualizations, and also a lot of transforms. So that might be common workflows like cleaning data, preparing data, filtering data, extracting data, etc. So how we got to here is that I spent 10 years working at startups in business and engineering roles. And I spent a lot of time building out either operations tooling or analysis tooling, which ultimately fell back into the spreadsheet. And I was very frustrated by the tools that my teams had at their disposal. And I came to the conclusion that Excel and Google Sheets are not architected correctly for the modern information environment. What we needed was a spreadsheet that had not only the common interface that everybody understood, calculations and formulas, etc., but also compute and data storage underneath, which would allow you to build more powerful applications for analysis inside the workbook, which everybody understands.
Yeah. One of the things that I always heard, right, and as I was saying before, in my previous life, I was a data analyst as well. Whenever I worked with advanced tools, and these tools have evolved significantly in the last 10 years until very recently, right, probably a year or two back, everybody mentioned that nobody will replace spreadsheets. Could be Excel or Google Sheets or whatever. Nobody is Sourcetable's mission to replace spreadsheets?
No, Sourcetable is a spreadsheet. So the best way to think about it is that for the last 6,000 years, humans have been organizing society through some kind of structured tabular data. When the computers came about and the PC era, we used Excel for all of our financial modeling and otherwise project management. When the browser came along, Google Sheets came out as the collaborative alternative. And now that we're in the AI era, there's a platform shift underway, and we see ourselves as the intelligent spreadsheet. And so that's what people will be using Sourcetable for. Not only for the regular spreadsheet tasks they want, but if they want to bring more intelligence to bear, more automation to bear, then they will use Sourcetable. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think I saw this on your website. It says that Sourcetable claims to be the last spreadsheet you will ever need.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is very interesting. I want to. It's a good marketing punchline as well. But apart from that, what is your mission? What is your vision? That you hope to achieve through this? Because you mentioned that you just want to make spreadsheets more intelligent. But I'm sure that the existing ecosystems of spreadsheets, which is Microsoft and Google, which are some competitors to have, will be also looking at doing this, right? So, what is your moat?
Yeah. So I guess starting from the mission. So Sourcetable's mission is to make data accessible to everybody. And so we see AI and just generally technology. The goal of it is to give people what they want. And what they want in terms of data is to be able to either complete a job to be done or create a report or to collaborate to ultimately do some kind of analysis or workflow. When it comes to Excel or Google Sheets, often what we're finding is that either you don't have the skills or training, or the data is not in the right format, or the analysis takes a long period of time, and we can go from a task taking hours or even a day, in some cases, down to minutes. And so that is a big advantage. With respect to Google and Microsoft, what you will see is that because they do not have this vertically integrated architecture with both storage and compute, you can only do limited tasks. You can do very limited tasks based on what's available to you inside the workbook, but you don't have access to, for example, a full suite of tools at your disposal. You don't have access to cloud compute to be able to do more advanced things. Excel now has Python, but you can't do as much with it. Under the hood, Sourcetable is a very, very powerful application. So when you see it, it feels and looks just like Excel or Google Sheets, all the same formulas and functions. Underneath that, everything reduces down to code. And so you're either reducing down to SQL-based code or Python-based code. And that means our AI is able to validate that the work that it is doing for you is factual and accurate. And you need to be able to rely on that code-based output to be able to trust what AI is doing for you. You need to move from probabilistic to deterministic. And as you move to more powerful use cases, for example, anything you might want to do with NumPy or SciPy, or maybe you're using Plotly or Bokeh, being able to access the hundreds of data science tools at your disposal with Sourcetable is an advantage that we have today. And you will see that we get more and more tools and capabilities that are interoperable in a way that Excel and Google Sheets cannot provide because they don't have that same infrastructure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does make sense. I would like to also go a little dive in a little deeper by understanding, and if you can give us an example, right?
Sure.
Walk us through a person. Let's say I'm really scared of spreadsheets, right? And that's a very common thing that happens to almost everyone. And that's why people are really, or I'm not good at math or something like that, right? But spreadsheets for me, for some reason, are something that make me very calm, right? So for example, whenever I'm trying to, I'm on my fitness journey, I use spreadsheets. Just if I have logged every TV show I've watched in my life in a spreadsheet.
Wow.
Just, because people ask me what TV show to watch, and I usually watch so many, but then I'm able to recommend only the last one or two, but then I'm able to sort and, these things. So, but for most, it's something which is a very taboo, and they feel like, they really fear spreadsheets for some reason. So for someone who is that apprehensive about even opening a spreadsheet, can you help walk through a problem statement that they would face, right?
Sure.
You can take a very day-to-day example and then walk them through.
Yeah, I can go through a bunch. I think the first thing I would say to anybody who feels intimidated by spreadsheets is I totally understand. I remember being on that learning journey. The reason why spreadsheets are used by over 1 billion people today is because they're very easy to use to get started. But once you go on that learning curve, things get hard. Maybe you don't know how to do a VLOOKUP, you don't know how to do a pivot table, you don't know what to ask for. AI changes all of that. So now you have essentially unlimited digital intelligence on demand. So I like to say you can pivot like nobody's watching. You can ask all the embarrassing questions you don't want to ask your coworker, and you just ask the chatbot. You say, hey, how do I do this? What should I even think about to do this? What are the steps I should walk through to do this? And an example of what this might be, we see Sourcetable used by everybody, as you might expect, from managers down to executive assistants, personal assistants, operators, sales, marketing, analysis, etc. So one thing you may find, a very common one, is you may have a list of orders that come through for last month for an e-commerce company, and you want to understand who are my power users, who's purchasing the most items, who's purchasing the most expensive items, who's doing the most purchases, which countries are most represented, which cities are most represented, which are my problem customers, who do I have to keep giving refunds to, or who's triggering customer support statements. With Sourcetable, you can import your file, usually a CSV or an Excel file, and you just start asking questions. It is as easy as that. And Sourcetable takes on the analysis work for you.
I think the point that you're trying to mention, a lot of people are trying to solve, right? Talk to your data is a very problem statement that everybody is trying to solve. And Excel is probably the most raw form of data that you can start talking to. And it's very comforting to be able to see the numbers while at the same time be able to talk to them. One of my questions is, can you also help us explain whether it makes learning Excel or learning spreadsheets in itself easier? For example, whenever I have asked someone to VLOOKUP is one of the most complex functions that anybody uses, but it's the most essential. VLOOKUP or pivots, right? Those are the two probably. If you know them, then you're at least a semi-expert in Excel. Is what I like to believe. But they are still really difficult to kind of start using, or some of these things. Does your tool also enable people to start learning Excel in a way that they can then be more confident of using spreadsheets and do a little more detailed analysis themselves if they want to? Or how do you kind of take care of that aspect of a user journey?
Yeah, 100%. I think the important thing to know is that the game has changed. Spreadsheets are no longer hard to use. If you can ask your question, you can get an answer. And often that question, if you're at the beginning of the learning journey, especially let's say you're a recent grad, you've just entered the workforce, you don't know how to do everything yet, you can ask the computer, literally. The best way to learn how to use AI is to talk to it. Language models are language-based. The more context you can provide, the better the answer you will get. If you want, you can type everything out, but it's better to just use voice and talk to the machine. When you use voice, you can ask it how to complete a task, and it will walk you step by step how to complete the task. It can do the task for you. We can also teach you how to do it. It can also tell you how it did it, which might mean, this is how I created the formula. This is how I wrote the code. This is the relationship between entities. Here is a summary of what is going on. Here are definitions of pieces of it. So let's just say in a typical business, you might have your operating model, you might have your cash flow statement, your balance sheet, your profit and loss. If you don't have any experience, you don't know where to start. And you can just ask AI, hey, what should I be thinking about here? What is this thing that I'm talking to? How should I think about analyzing it? What are some calculations I may want to make? And it essentially is a personal tutor on demand. So for me, I spend a lot of time talking to users, and on the advanced spectrum, we see people doing everything from soil science to oceanography to light spectrum analysis. And I can tell you, I have no background in any of these fields. And so the very first place I start is through a technique that data scientists will know, which is exploratory data analysis. I ask the computer, hey, what is this data? Can you define what everything is? What are the relationships between objects? What should I be thinking about? What kind of analyses can I do? And then I select one and say, how do I do that analysis? And so on and so forth. So it is as useful as you are curious, I think would be the way that I would phrase it.
It's funny that you mentioned exploratory data analysis, but I think before EDA, one of the most fundamental problems to solve is the data itself, right? Like whether the data is clean or not.
100%.
Do you kind of enable that through Sourcetable as well? Because that's the most fundamental problem everybody's trying to solve. Because
For sure. So when you think about spreadsheets, you're dealing with analysis, you're dealing with operations workflows, you're dealing with transforms, maybe visualizations and collaboration. When you unpack transforms, that means a lot of things, but often it's the very beginning of the chain. I need to clean this data up before I can do analysis on it. So there's a number of ways you can do that in Sourcetable. The first is you can ask Sourcetable to clean it up for you. Let's say it's a file, and it will write code and just automatically process everything. If you want, you can take a different approach. You can use something called magic autofill, or there's a data cleaning button. So at any point, if you have a cell, you select in the top right and you get a little purple button and it'll give you a drop down. You can either ask for what you want, you can select data cleaning, or you can do something called a magic autofill. So for example, when I am letting people know about Sourcetable, sometimes I do mail merge campaigns. I sent a mail merge to all the professors in the United States to let them know that Sourcetable is free for students. But to do that, I had to say Professor so-and-so. And all the professors have all these different suffixes. And there's about 50 different varieties. You can't write a formula for that. And so I just selected everything. I said, give me normalized surnames. And then I had the clean data seconds later of 1,000 rows. And it is very hard to do that scale of data cleaning in ChatGPT or in Anthropic. You need something that can go through large amounts of data very quickly and perform simple data cleaning operations for you. Sourcetable can do that. And so it makes your life easy.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Finally, coming to the business side of things, right? Like, I want to understand your business model a little bit. It's a product that you've put online with a freemium model, etc. I'm sure your aim is to kind of Sourcetable to become the next ChatGPT of spreadsheets, and it becomes a household name, right? One of the things that we were talking before the podcast as well, everything has become so easy to build, right?
Yeah.
Could be vibe coding. I was joking with a friend of mine that I'm a full stack engineer. No, don't worry, I'm not. But I just paid Replit, I think I tried 2-3 tools, and then I went ahead with one of the tools to kind of build something out, and something small. But they say that you can vibe code into a tool over a weekend, right?
Yeah.
How? So I think also going back to the previous question, also there is that as well, where you are trying to everybody can build products very easily, and at the same time there is the Googles and the Microsofts of the world who are already there in terms of spreadsheets. How do you plan to kind of keep that moat and ensure that you become relevant? I'm sure that the answer today might not be relevant tomorrow, and you'll have to keep adapting. But what is your answer today?
Yeah. So I think the place that I would start is in vibing. You can definitely vibe a workbook or an analysis. If you need a multi-tab VLOOKUP to go and kind of look at different tabs of data and retrieve data and join it all together, so that way you have a single master table, you can ask for that by just talking to a machine. And that is a very different experience to sitting down and writing formulas by hand for every single piece of calculations. You may find at the end you want to go through and make some tweaks, just like in vibe coding today. But vibing is a very good analogy for the more creative you are, the more you can ask the spreadsheet to do work for you. What is, I think, less known about Sourcetable today is it is not only a spreadsheet, it is a full application platform. So we have integrations with hundreds of data applications. You can access your Postgres data, your MySQL data, your Mongo data, your Shopify, Salesforce, Stripe, you name it. You can get access to all of that inside Sourcetable. The next step, obviously, will be MCP, when you'll be able to access thousands of capabilities online through external agents. We also have internal agents. So we have a full market analysis agent where you can do market summaries, you can do research reports, you can do a lot of different things. And so already you're able to kind of vibe your way to an answer, and those capabilities will only increase. The reason why Sourcetable is able to do this, going back to the core underpinnings, is that unlike Excel, which has 50 years of legacy code, and Google Sheets, which has 20 years of legacy code, we are able to build spreadsheets AI native from the ground up. And that gives us these capabilities for interoperability with the ecosystem much, much faster. And as things evolve, we'll keep plugging in. So we've gone as an ecosystem from language models to kind of reasoning and then to agents. And you are seeing that Sourcetable has the language models, the reasoning, and the agents already. And I think it'll take some time before Excel and Google Sheets catches up. And by that point, we'll be on to the next thing. The other thing that is interesting in this world is that we are an application company. We're not a model company, which means that we're downstream of all of these model innovations that are coming, and we're model agnostic. So we get to use all of the best innovation out of OpenAI or Anthropic or Grok or DeepSeek or you name it. And we're able to host these models on our cloud services and infrastructure, which provides a really good response for data scientists. But it also enables us to be able to be using best-in-class AI for whatever tool or workflow a user needs. Whereas if you are dealing with Excel, you're locked into the OpenAI ecosystem, or with Google Sheets, the Anthropic ecosystem. And the truth of it is, different models are better at different things, and you want to use them all. And so we have that advantage too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's very articulately put. Do you know the accelerator keys that you can use on the Microsoft?
Yeah.
And all of those.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love them is because I get to, whenever I use them, people are so impressed. I love to show off using my accelerator keys, and I love to kind of show, I'll touch it. These days I've been using Mac from this. I've forgotten by these things. But one of the things that I'm really sad about is if Sourcetable becomes like my my show off move is no more show off. But the point I'm trying to make is that, because of, people have honed the Excel skills for a while, and they have obviously accelerator keys is just a medium, but being able to kind of quickly navigate through all the tools and provide summary of analysis, while that is just a medium to get to the objective of finding an insight, it's still something that people hold close, right? And they like to work on Excel sheets, and I'm sure there will be a few laggards who will not adopt to quick AI tools. And sometimes I am complicit of not adopting to the AI tools especially, I should not be, but that happens sometimes. But for the next generation of, let's say, 20 years from now, whilst the nature of spreadsheets might evolve and how you utilize them might evolve, the skill remains inherent, right? Like the fundamental utilization of it to draw insights, organize,
Yeah.
personal and professional lives. What is your advice for some of the people to kind of start honing their skills in terms of, being able to use spreadsheets and be able to kind of, function fast in the modern corporate and AI driven world?
For sure. My number one piece of advice to people is to stay curious. What we see is that younger people tend to have the biggest advantage in AI.
Yeah.
And that is because they have less embarrassment around asking silly questions to AI, but they actually learn the fastest. And it's the pace of learning that gives you the best advantage. So the more time you spend playing with AI and spreadsheets, the faster you learn, the more capable you become, the more you understand what is possible next. And you get to stay on the curve of learning. Unfortunately, for people who are very personally identifying with their spreadsheet mastery, it is inevitable in the near term that Sourcetable will be winning the Excel games. So when you think about the Excel games, you've got the best spreadsheet people in the world. I don't think people realize just how quickly the exponential of AI intelligence is increasing. Everybody in the world is soon going to have access to a digital intelligence on demand that will far outclass any of the human competitors in that game. And so everybody's going to have those same abilities. So that the keyboard shortcut ability is no longer going to be the advantage. The real advantage is how good are you at thinking? How good are you at thinking about thinking? How good are you at creating things that can create things? For example, I may want to build an agent that is a marketing agent that can help me do marketing tasks. And when I think about that marketing agent, I want to automate all of the reports in my company, whether that's pulling in the data or cleaning the data or joining or VLOOKUPing the data together to then creating a report with visualizations and the right formatting to then sending that report to my team to then monitoring for the latest updates. Not only do I want an agent to be able to do that, I want that agent to think about what else should it be building. Mm. So it's not just building a tool for building the specific job function. It is similar to training a worker to think about how to complete a task and having them go off and have their own ideas. And that is the world that we're entering today.
Yeah. I think, this is a very interesting take on things, right? I have, and it's a whole other topic that we can discuss for another 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Way we interact with tools or interact with data, which is something which is there. And then, I once asked what is the difference between a copilot and a chatbot. A chatbot is basically something that replies, copilot is basically, it is an intelligent bot which is, working with you and all of that. Do you think that the likes of tools and, not just Sourcetable, every intelligent tool that is being built, the way we think, maybe we can keep this short because as I said, this is like a more humanitarian subject, and how is our cognition going to change? How are we going to analyze, and do you think about these things, and how do you how do we think about data analysis and this thing?
I do a little bit. I think personally that the future of spreadsheets is spreadsheets, and the reason for that is that fundamentally we may have these digital intelligences available to us, but ultimately it needs to fit into a workflow that is useful at a scale that humans can understand. The reason we use spreadsheets is because they have constraints, they're very easy to use, and allows us to collaborate with each other. And so I still see that staying the same. In terms of how I think about where AI is taking us and the impact that will have on society, it is hard to go in a simple answer here. I think the best answer I can give is that I was listening to David Sachs yesterday, and what he was saying, and he's the AI czar of the United States at the moment, so incredible figure. He's saying that the pace of intelligence is increasing, and we should expect to see a million-fold increase in the capability of AI over the next 4 years. And I don't think anybody fully understands what it means to ride that exponential, but it is helpful to think any manual task that you were doing today that may be boring or repetitious, all of that is going away. And what remains is our capacity to be creative as humans and curious as humans and to be able to organize that for value in the world. And so I'm very excited about it. I think we get a lot more time back for the things that we enjoy.
No, I agree with it. I think apart from the ops part of most professional world, I think as tools start thinking more intelligently, right? I think it's a very interesting topic to topic for especially social scientists to figure out how humans will think, because before ChatGPT, I used to always think how to do my job. Now I think how to input to the ChatGPT so that it does the job very quickly for me. Right? It could be writing up a proposal, it could be using Excel sheets and all that.
Well, I'll tell you two things that have changed here. The first is, I don't think people realize how big an impact Google Sheets and Excel prior to us had on thought. They are like the spreadsheet itself, the digital spreadsheet is the most used analysis tool on the planet. Right? It introduced over 1 billion people to code. They don't realize it. They're making function calls. It fundamentally changes how we think about the structure of data. It changes how we think about the network of the graph. It changes how we think about compute. And it ultimately makes us more analytical. It completely changed, it has already changed the way that humans think about their world and their environment and how they interact with that. One example of just a very small function that's changing is, I think macros, like the ability to automate a task through a workflow. A chat thread itself is a macro. It is a very loose language-based instruction set, which you can now apply to another task and say, hey, do you remember yesterday when I got you to do this operations work and clean the data and do this reporting and then send a bunch of emails? Well, I want you to do that, except I want to change it for a sales campaign for this other function in the company and understand the parameters of what we were doing and loosely interpret that and give me a plan of action and see if it's good. And that is the new form of macro. So all the ways that we think about these component pieces changes, but ultimately, we have jobs to be done and they'll get done in the world.
On that note, thank you so much, Ian, for spending time with me. It was wonderful having a conversation on spreadsheets with you.
Likewise. Thanks for having us.